Hello and welcome to the radiotimes.com Doctor Who podcast. My name's Hugh.
My name's Morgan.
And this week we are pulling the crank, or winding the crank, and getting things going again on the old rumour mill. That's the rumour mill, not the TARDIS, it's the rumour mill. Because, we've talked about a few rumours on this podcast in the past, but this week, the big rumour is that there's a significant former Doctor Who star returning to Jodie Whittaker's next series. Morgan, don't know if you want to say who that person is, rumoured to be coming back.
I can certainly speculate about who it might be. So the rumor doing the rounds on Twitter at the moment is that Catherine Tate is going to be returning to Doctor Who. From what we can gather, there is some filming. This is confirmed that Doctor Who is filming in Liverpool at the moment. Jodie Whittaker has been spotted on location. John Bishop has been spotted on location. Yeah, it makes sense to be doing some location filming.
The TARDIS is there. That kind of lines up.
Yeah, so that all makes sense. It makes sense to be filming in Liverpool, given John Bishop joining the series as Dan. So that's all absolutely happening. What's less clear is some fans on Twitter have claimed that Catherine Tate has also been spotted in Liverpool at the moment. There are unconfirmed, unsubstantiated reports that she has spoken to some fans, that she has claimed she has signed an NDA and so she can't talk about what she's doing in Liverpool or what she's potentially filming in Liverpool. Again, unsubstantiated. This has all been wound up. It's been spun into gold on the rumor mill. And the end result is that Doctor Who fans are leaping to the conclusion that Donna Noble will be appearing in Doctor Who Series 13. So that's the rumor. That's the gossip.
Yeah. So this is kind of interesting. It's a bit out of the blue, I suppose, if it is something that they were thinking about doing. It would surprise me a lot if it's something they were doing. I mean, when I first heard this a couple of days ago, I thought, that's just rubbish. You always hear stuff like this. Oh yeah, Paul McGann's back. I remember hearing years ago, oh, Paul McGann's going to be in Planet of the Dead, the planet with the bus, and oh yeah, they're bringing back, oh yeah, the curator's going to be in this series. Like none of this stuff happens. Sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah. No, recently it was that David Tennant was going to be in Revolution of the Daleks. That was the...
Oh yeah, God, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always this sort of thing. But it is interesting because part of me did then think, could it be true? Because we're going on a lot of ifs here. If these tweets, this is all we're getting tweets of people saying they've seen or spoken to Catherine Tate. We've got no photos of Catherine Tate on set. We've not had any confirmation for anybody that she's actually filming anything in Liverpool. Let's take it as read. Catherine Tate is in Liverpool and she said, oh, I'm filming something. I don't know exactly what is being filmed in Liverpool at the moment. It's quite a coincidence if she was there filming something and Doctor Who is also very ostentatiously at the moment filming there. It's also, a bit of a coincidence that she'd say, oh, I've signed an NDA and I can't talk about it because, most stuff people kind of know what they're filming or are willing to talk about it. So that's a bit odd if it's true. Because it might not be true. But yeah, and then I started to think, well, if this is true and Catherine Tate's in Doctor Who, would it fit in with what we've heard about Series 13 so far? And actually, in my head, it kind of does, because obviously this is the series where they've had to reduce episodes because of the pandemic. They've had to delay filming. And while not much has been announced, there's been a lot of filming spotted with things like the Weeping Angels are apparently back. Possibly the Autons is a new thing. We might talk about that in a future episode. And Sontarans, things like that. We've got a new companion. There's rumours that this is going to be a regeneration series, which is obviously quite buzzy and exciting. So I was thinking, with this in mind, if this is, Chris Chibnall's All-Star, what can we do to make this series of Doctor Who exciting, even if we've lost episodes, we can't film, abroad anymore, we can't do big crowd action scenes. What can you do? Big star cameo. And has Chris Chibnall brought back a big star cameo from the David Tennant era of Doctor Who before? Morgan, can you remember one?
Yeah, well, do you know what? He should never have done that, because now any possible sort of unlikely rumor that surfaces were like, well, before he brought back Captain Jack, I would have said no. But now I think anything's possible. But no, it is a good point that we've discussed before about how I'm sure it was all part of his Chibnall master plan. But if you look at the approach to Doctor Who Series 11 and Series 12, and this may have been part of a long game, it may have all been intentional, but Series 11 was very stripped back, no old monsters, no returning characters, all original foes, new stories, and then Series 12 was the Master's back and Captain Jack's returning, and so many kind of references to the past, and Morbius doctors, and so on, so on. So now, post Series 12, these kind of things do feel more plausible. So Catherine Tate returning as Donna is certainly doesn't feel as much of a long shot as it once did.
Yeah, I think my thing with it is as a character, I feel like Donna is a slightly odd one to bring back for a number of reasons. For story reasons, obviously, the way that she left the Doctor was quite like definite. I mean, we obviously did meet her again in the End of Time. Donna had, for anyone who doesn't remember, Donna had her memory wiped by the Doctor because she had a kind of Time Lord meta crisis thing going on. So if she remembers her spacefaring ways, then she'll blow up. Essentially.
Well, yeah.
Except when she doesn't.
Because, except when she doesn't. Yeah, because in Journey's End, yeah, she became the Dr. Donna, and we were told that her mind would burn up if she ever remembered her time with the Doctor. But then when she does start to remember her time with the Doctor, it's just a sort of handy form of mental self-defense that kicks off. There's sort of a wave of energy, isn't there, that explodes forth from her mind and takes out a bunch of John Sims. But so there's ways and means around it, I suppose, as well. Time travel, there's the potential for a Donna who hasn't yet met the Doctor to meet Jodie Whittaker's Doctor and not recognize her as the Doctor because regeneration. So that's a possibility. I think that's a way you could get around it past Donna meeting the Doctor, rather than post Meta Crisis Donna, whose brain may or may not explode were she to reunite with the Doctor.
Yeah, also, there's a possibility that would be undone in some way and she would remember the Doctor and it wouldn't be her Doctor. There's always some way around it. But part of my thought was as well, like beyond the story element, I can't really think of putting this Doctor and Donna together. Whereas, if you brought, say, like Billie Piper back as Rose, Billie Piper's recently said she wouldn't come back, fair enough. Like, I'm not saying she would or should, but you could kind of see that being kind of an interesting dynamic for whatever reason. And similarly, I think like River Song with this Doctor would be a great, dynamic, because River Song has met multiple Doctors. She's one of the few people who kind of, is very aware of the Doctor changing. And also, I think River Song's husband becoming a woman is quite like a funny sort of thing that River Song would approve of. You could see where they go with that. With Catherine Tate as Donna Noble, I'm a bit like, I don't really know where that goes, because she was only ever with the David Tennant Doctor. She's so strongly associated with that one character. It seems odd to kind of throw her in with Jodie Whittaker, who is, I think there's definitely some similarities between Jodie's Doctor and David's Doctor. Like, they've tried to play it up a bit, I think, like with the whole what thing at the end of The Timeless Children. They have sort of tried to evoke that era, and maybe this is part of it. They brought back John Barrowman. Billie Piper says no, but Catherine Tate's there. She's that same kind of, as John Barrowman says, golden age. Maybe it's all part of it. It's just, I'm kind of like, what's the story there? What's, either Donna just doesn't recognize the Doctor as just sort of there as a slightly pointless cameo, or they undo the ending of Journey's End and the End of Time, which is kind of undermines it, because it was quite emotional. It was a big sacrifice. I mean, it's like, oh, she's fine again, and time travel exists, so then the 10th Doctor could hang out with her again, I guess.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, but that arc that Donna goes on in Series 4, I think it's one of the best sort of companion arcs probably in all of Doctor Who. She, in terms of the way in which that character evolves and she grows across the series, I think a lot of people will say that Series 4 is if not the best, certainly one of the best series of revived Doctor Who, and a large part of that is down to Catherine Tate, down to Donna, down to that journey she goes on. But I think the one part of that character's arc which is a little bit divisive is the ending, because you're right in that, like, it is incredibly sort of heartbreaking what happens to Donna. and it's really well played by Catherine Tate. Those scenes, and David Tennant and Bernard Cribbins, like that whole tragic end to Journey's End is brilliant. But I do remember at the time and since, some fans have sort of raised an eyebrow at the fact that Donna does experience so much and she does grow so much and develop so much as a person, and then it all just gets undone and kind of and like not only that but against her will.
Yeah.
And it's a question as to like, was that really the right way to wrap up that story, that all of that is taken away from her? And so is there the potential to revisit that and to give her some kind of happy ending? And like at first you think, well, that would, like you say, that would require undoing a previous plot development, but it's kind of like the onus of the showrunner at the time to do that if they want to do it. Like Stephen Moffat basically undid the entire Time War and the destruction of Gallifrey, which was like the crux pretty much of the whole Russell T Davies era, right? Was that the Doctor that was his big not far from his only innovation, but like one of his big innovations was Gallifrey's gone, the Doctor is the last Time Lord. And okay, Russell T Davies himself brought back the Time Lords, but then Stephen Moffat with Day of the Doctor like totally rewrote the destruction of Gallifrey, and undid all that. And so it's not to say Chris Chibnall couldn't do something similar, couldn't revisit Donna's exit and rewrite it in some way.
Definitely. I mean, obviously Stephen Moffat did revisit that exit in a way in Hellbent, right? Like they have the whole thing where Clara kind of objects to the Doctor planning to remove her memories in a similar way to what he did with Donna, albeit for slightly different reasons. And she turns it back on him. And that was, I think, a little bit of a response to that earlier storyline.
And actually in the pilot as well, the Doctor tries to wipe Bill's memories intending that she be a one-off assistant and not a regular. And she's like, don't you wipe me? And so it does feel almost like something that, post Donna getting her memory wiped, it's been revisited in Doctor Who a couple of times, and normally not reflected in a great light. It's not reflected in, it's not portrayed as something that the Doctor, some great act he had to do to save his friend. It's normally portrayed as something quite unpleasant that happened to Donna. And again, was that the right note on which to leave such a kind of brilliant, much loved character? So maybe there is scope to revisit that. And she did have a sort of quasi happy ending in the sense of, she forgot all of her travels with the Doctor, but he did the very thing the Doctor that Doc Brown tells you not to do, and kind of gave her a winning lottery ticket in the end of time. So if we do revisit Donna now, she will be a multi-millionaire. So Jamie and Zoe back in the War Games got their memories of the Doctor wiped, and they didn't come across a fortune. So they're the ones really suffering. But the point is, maybe there is scope here to do something more with Donna.
Definitely. I mean, like you say, maybe this is a kind of way of like the Doctor sort of saying, "Oh, I did something wrong here. Maybe there's something else I can do." Here. Maybe the Doctor's going to rewrite a wrong. That said, didn't Jodie Whittaker's Doctor wipe Ada Lovelace's memories like last series?
Yeah, and it wasn't entirely clear at the time. Yeah, and it felt quite honest. Like it's not like the Doctor
didn't wipe Byron's memories like 3 weeks later.
No, the Doctor meets like a ton of historical figures, and unless we've like missed a bunch of really depressing prologues that just weren't aired, or epilogues, that weren't aired, the Doctor doesn't immediately wipe their memories of everything that happened in the aftermath. I mean, Edison was pretty, amoral, and they brought him onto the TARDIS being, "Oh, look at all this alien technology. Off you pop." Yeah. I remember at the time thinking, is this going to be, part of a building to something that the Doctor had wiped Ada Lovelace's memory? But no, that was just a one-off.
There you go. But yeah, no, I think it could be an interesting thing. And to be honest, your thing that I'd sort of forgotten, Donna won the triple rollover, I seem to remember. And you do wonder maybe if there's something in that. Like previously, we've seen characters who the Doctor's helped kind of come back, even if not in person. Like, Mr. Copper from Voyage of the Damned is suggested to have developed technology, which is later used by Harriet Jones with some sort of foundation. And so you could think, what's Donna's role in this world? She's obviously now a very wealthy woman. Does she kind of have some vague hint of like alien memories. Could she be involved with some sort of alien storyline? You know, the Doctor is surprised to find her old companion is in the thick of this. Maybe she's funding something unknowingly.
No, and you could definitely play around with the idea that that Donna has changed without remembering the specifics of what happened to her, right? You could definitely pick up with sort of an evolved Donna who has changed in a way without really remembering why exactly she changed or why her priorities are different. And she suddenly has this newfound obsession with alien life that she didn't have before, and she can't quite put her finger on why, or her brain will explode, or possibly not. But like, there's definitely I don't think it's a totally closed book. I think you're right in that like they'd have to find the right way into that story, because Donna, unlike Captain Jack, unlike River Song, Donna is tied to a very particular time in the show, one Doctor in particular. So you would have to think about how, you know, what the story is there with her meeting Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. You kind of don't want that to be, you know, the be all and end all of the story, just Donna freaking out over the fact that Doctor is now a woman. Like there's a far more interesting story to be told than just that, and I'm sure they would tell a more interesting story than that. But yeah, there's definitely scope there. They just need to think carefully about exactly how they approached it, I think.
Yeah, and I do wonder whether, like, from what we know about this era of Doctor Who, just the sheer level of explanation that would be needed to, like, say, oh, here's Donna, oh, here's what happened to Donna last time, in case you've forgotten, here's how we've undone it. I just feel like it's a storyline that was closed, you know, over a decade ago, well over a decade ago. Is this something that they're going to want to unpick? Because, like we say, with Captain Jack or whatever, the way the series left him was, oh, Captain Jack's gone off into space. And, you know, whether you count whatever happened, Torchwood Miracle Day or whatever, in you know, when Jack returns, he's just comes back from space. You know what I mean? Like that's basically what they leave it. Similarly with River Song, you know, they kind of, her story was quite closed, but they just kept on finding new little extra bits to pop her into. You know, if you wanted to bring back Bill is off traveling the stars. Bill can just come back from space. You know,
Clara.
Clara can come back from space. You know, it's a kind of a thing. Billy Piper, you know, Rose Tyler is in another universe, but she could come back from the other universe. Whereas, and Martha's just around. Martha's just like
Mickey,
knocking about.
Mickey,
just give him a call. You know, he's waiting by the phone. He's like, you know, why don't I ever get called anymore? But yeah, so it's interesting. Of all the New Who companions, I'd say, possibly with the exception of Amy and Rory, Donna's probably the one who it's hardest to explain how she's back in the series, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That said, Catherine Tate has, I think, been pretty voluble about, I loved being in Doctor Who, I'd totally do it again, in the way that, you know, people are. I think she's even said that relatively recently. I can't remember where, but
I mean,
you know, so it might be one of these things.
Yeah, no, and she's done obligatory mention, but she's recorded some Big Finish, so it's clearly not just like, you know, because of course you think, oh, is it all talk when someone says, oh, I'd love to go back, but no, she is, you know, she's put her money where her mouth is, and she's recorded some Big Finish stories with David Tennant, and also solo there was the Donna Noble kidnapped spin-off that Big Finish did as well. So like, she's clearly like has great affection for Doctor Who and for this character, so I think she'd be open to revisiting it in some way.
I mean, look, blue sky thinking, out of the box. Maybe we're looking at this all wrong. Maybe this isn't, you know, what happened to Donna next. Maybe this is, you know, like the two Doctors with Jamie McCrimmon back with the second Doctor. Maybe David Tennant and Jodie Whittaker doing a multi-Doctor special during the Donna era, and this is how we find out about it. You know, maybe the Doctor's like, oh no, remember when we were hanging out in Liverpool, we, you know, doing something when I was with Donna. And then blip, there they are. Why do they look a little older? We're not going to talk about that. David Tennant's got a beard now. We'll just skirt over that. It's all fine. You know, Patrick Troughton had grey hair when he came back. We just don't talk about it.
Yeah, we've got enough rumours to be dealing with on this podcast without coming up with our own.
This is my new rumour. I heard it from a man in Liverpool who saw David Tennant.
You should tweet that.
Pulling on a pinstripe suit and crying. No, he didn't really. Yeah, I don't know. We've had like a weird turn. Anyway, yeah, no, I think that's probably a little bit extreme. But to be honest, it's a funny thing because part of the next stage of this podcast was supposed to be, do we think this is a good idea or not? And my instinct was kind of no. But the way we've talked about it, I am like, to be honest, I feel like there's some interesting stories you could tell with Donna. Like, I think it's, the fact that you wouldn't have necessarily put these characters together, this Doctor and Donna, kind of makes me think that could be quite interesting. because you wouldn't, you're kind of like, oh yeah, River Song of the Doctor, but I feel like you kind of know how that's going to play out. Like, it was sort of interesting putting this Doctor with Jack because, again, John Barrowman was so specifically linked to a period of Doctor Who, but then putting him with Jodie Whittaker, it was kind of interesting to see how that transferred over. And Donna, was so bolshy and so like fun. It's sort of like, how would she react to this other person claiming to be the Doctor? There's quite a lot of fun stuff there. That said, I'm just like, it would just be so difficult to explain, like, to a casual audience, what the hell's going on.
Well, I think you're right in that if, say, Jack comes back to Doctor Who, you kind of know how it's going to play out to a degree. You know how he's going to react to the new Doctor, because it's going to be exactly the same way he reacted to the previous new Doctor. I mean, to the extent that Revolution of the Daleks literally uses the same dialogue from Utopia, the gag about if you had work done, you're one to talk. Yeah, it's the exact same joke. So you kind of know how that's going to play. Whereas not only have we never seen Donna interact with another Doctor, but like to meet this Doctor in particular, coming off the back of only knowing David Tennant, that would be like a big cataclysmic thing. It would be really interesting to see how she reacts to it. But then if she doesn't remember, you're not really getting that sort of dramatic playoff anyway. Yeah. So you're not, yeah. So you'd have to, it's complicated, isn't it? Like, you start pulling this thread if you think about it, because you need to have Donna remember the 10th Doctor in order to be able to compare her to the 13th Doctor, compare him to the 13th Doctor. I suppose the only way you can do it, really, unless, like we say, they have some way of Donna getting her memories back, but then you have to do all of that before you even start getting into the interplay between the Doctor and Donna. I suppose the only way you can do it is that Donna doesn't recognize the Doctor, and it's more a story from the Doctor's point of view, how sad she is that she can't tell Donna who she is or her brain will explode. And potentially, the Doctor looks like Jodie Whittaker now. That no longer triggers brain fire for Donna. Maybe that's a way around it. But then it would seem like such a missed opportunity to never have Donna recognize the Doctor or properly interact with the Doctor. Like I say, there's ways of doing it, but it does require a lot of thought, and there's certainly a lot of ways you could do it badly or unsatisfactorily. And if you want to bring Donna back, such a beloved character, you need to get it right.
Yeah, I think so too. It seems like an odd move, would be sort of my thought. Like, when I saw it, I was just like, what? It just seems so strange. But
like you say, that's,
you never know. You never know how these things are going to go. And it could be that there's more to this. If this is even true, that there's more to this. We should say, like, I mean, how likely do we think this is? I've kind of talked myself out of it being likely, even if I've talked myself into it being possibly okay as a story. I'm sort of thinking, this just doesn't make sense. And also, I just feel like they could probably keep this secret. They kept the Captain Jack thing secret pretty well. They had John Barrowman in, wrapped up in, coats and with umbrellas over his head and stuff, being shuttled into various churches. Catherine Tate, meanwhile, is wandering around being like, hello, I've signed an NDA.
Yeah. No,
it doesn't quite match.
Yeah. No, if Catherine Tate was returning to Doctor Who, they probably wouldn't shoot all of her scenes in like Liverpool city centre. And allowing her to sort of randomly talk to fans. I don't know. Like post Captain Jack, who knows? All bets are off. It could be true. But it's the one thing of is it true? Maybe not. But it seems certain. I'd say it seems improbable. And then if it is true, is it a good idea? And I think, we've kind of gone back and forth on that. I think, yes, potentially, like anything really. Yes, potentially, if they do it right. But there's a lot of kind of landmines you'd have to avoid to make sure that it doesn't just feel like a cameo for the sake of it. Like, especially with the way Donna's story ended, if you're going to revisit that, you need to really do something with the character. It can't be her just popping up for the sake of nostalgia, because there's so much work you'd have to do to reestablish the character. There's so much work you'd have to do to deliver her like a new ending that is worthy of that character and that will satisfy the fans. So if you're gonna do it, you really need to get it right, like more so than like bringing back Captain Jack, because he is the character who can just kind of pop in. He's the kind of character you can't just bring him back for a bit of fun. Like John Barrowman's here, isn't that fun? and now he's gone again. Like, that's kind of fine with Captain but you know what I mean? That's kind of what happened in Revolution of the Daleks, right? There wasn't like a huge amount of character development for Jack or anything like that, but that's kind of okay, because that's what I think it's fine. Captain Jack operates in that way. He can be brought back as like just kind of like it's a fun glitzy guest star to have John Barrowman. It's fun to have John Barrowman back in Doctor Who. But with Donna, because of the way that character's storyline ended, it would require a lot more thought going into it, and it's far more important that you do something meaningful with the character.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. Interestingly, this is recorded as live, this podcast. We just got an email in from someone from Catherine Tate's representation, who has said that I can confirm Catherine is very much not in Liverpool and is not on Doctor Who set. So take from that what you will. That could just be a complete denial. In which case this discussion was fairly pointless, but we have more so than usual, but we have done a great pitch for if they ever do want to bring Catherine Tate back.
Look, this wasn't a pointless conversation, even though it was sort of derailed there at the last moment by Catherine Tate's reps getting in touch, because were they to ever bring back Donna, we have now discussed whether or not it would be a good idea, and the answer is maybe. So there you go, not a pointless conversation.
But what do you think, listening at home? Not about whether that was a pointless conversation or not. Keep that to yourself. Do you think Catherine Tate, would make for a good Doctor Who return? Do you think the rumours are true, notwithstanding whatever emails we may or may not have received? And what would your pitch be for the return of Donna Noble? Let us know in the comments below or on social media. We'll be back next week with another edition of the podcast. We also have loads of Doctor Who stuff on the website. We have reviews of the new Doctor Who game, The Lonely Assassins, which we talked about in last week's podcast. We couldn't review it then, but we can now. And loads of new Doctor Who news and features and things like that. Until next time, I've been Hugh.
I've been Morgan.
And we have also been secretly filming Doctor Who without telling you. So look forward to seeing our grand return in Series 13. Goodbye.